Here, and thank you very much. Hopefully today's a little, well, wait, I just pressed go live on the mainstream, and I pressed go live on the mainstream, and all of a sudden there's a barrage of comments here, and it's good to see you all. Lisa, Cheryl, everybody, good morning, and it's good to see you all. I'm sorry it's been a few days. This is the second time that we are streaming this to the audio podcast of Honking for Freedom. And I think that's what I branded it. So if you listen on Spotify, then you'll be able to search for Honking for Freedom. You'll find it. I haven't yet seeded the RSS feed to all the other audio podcast players. I will do that. That's actually on my list for today. Hopefully I will get to it. And for those of you who are listening in audio form, thank you. And please send me suggestions, recommendations, ideas, whatever you think. And I'm always looking for your input. Good morning, Jesse. Good morning, Megan. Happy Easter long weekend. And to you as well, Jesse. And a happy Easter long weekend to Rocky, who I just posted a video of Rocky in Twitter. Rocky is apparently my number one fan of the animal kingdom so far, although I'm hearing rumors of some cats. If you are listening on or watching this on TikTok, the Chinese spyware app, we're just starting the Freedom Coffee live streams. If you want to go and watch it live, it's on Rumble, YouTube, Locals, so honkingforfreedom.locals.com, and now in audio form, as I just suggested, on Spotify, and soon to be in other podcast players. So come join if you're on TikTok, because I'm going to be shutting TikTok down now because, well, the CCP knows enough about me, and you as well. All right, so let me just send that out on TikTok, and whatever it does, and shut down all the noise, and here we go. All right, great. I hope you're all having an awesome holiday. It's all starting positive for all of you. I had a difficult couple of days. I know, as I told some of you, I was going to try to live stream yesterday, but I had quite a few delays trying to get, again, I don't know what's in the air lately, but I keep getting delayed by like 10 hours. Which is highly unusual, the way my route actually works. And it was very frustrating. And in my case, we've all worked for companies that are completely disorganized. And the company that I have a contract with for my, as an owner-operator, it's just so frustrating. They're not systems thinkers, so everything is always reactionary, last minute. And I was delayed leaving. When did I depart? I departed on Tuesday. I was delayed by 3 hours trying to fetch my trailer out of a yard and getting all the shunt drivers. And everybody was frustrated, so it was so disorganized. You know, it can fit like 150 trailers, and they parked in 180 or something like that. And so I was several hours late getting to, where did I go? I went to Maryland. And I went to Costco in Maryland, not the Costco that you know, but the Costco distribution centers. I did a little TikTok video just showing it. These massive, massive complexes. And Costco is a very well-organized company, and they're really they're usually right on the clock. So I arrived there late. I arrived there at like 1 a.m, and I was already in the dock waiting to be unloaded at 6. And hey, Joe, what's up, brother? It's good to see you, man. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later on. I'm glad you're here. So I'm in Costco, and I had timed everything that when I get unloaded, I'd be finished what's called a reset. Drivers in the U.S., well, in Canada too, but the numbers are a little different, need to stop for a certain amount of time and take basically a rest, go to sleep, whatever it is, have time off. And we have what's called an 8-hour, there's a split, 8-hour, 2-hour split. Don't worry about the details of that. But basically, I need to stop for 8 hours. But because I was delayed, I was stopped for 6 hours. And then at Costco, as organized as they are, you have to get out of there right away. You can't just hang out in their complex because they have thousands of trucks coming every day, or hundreds of trucks, whatever. So I had to leave early, which means I have to put in what's called compliance. It's personal time. I had to find a place. There were no truck stops anywhere near this area of Maryland. Truck stops are usually packed anyways. So I found a Home Depot that I could park behind, which was, I don't know, 10 kilometers away or something like that. And instead of being able to leave like I had originally planned, I would have left Costco at 6 in the morning. I would have gone to my pickup, and I would have been back in Toronto maybe around 6 o'clock in the evening. Because of that, I had to do my full 10 hours. I couldn't leave. This is the sort of stuff trucking stories. Truckers will know what this is. I was forced to stay put until 11 o'clock as opposed to 6. And then it was a couple of hours to get up to my backhaul. And the backhaul guy says to me, "Oh, it's too bad you weren't here earlier." I'm like, "Oh, why?" "Well, 2 of our 3 docks are broken. And so we only have 1 dock, and there are 4 trucks ahead of you. But if you came earlier, then we could have had you in and out right away." Great. So that ended up being 5 hours waiting to get loaded. So, and also remember, during all of this, that some of you know, I've had a very bad stomach flu, which made all of this very logistically challenging. Should put it that way. And so I end up not getting back to Toronto. I was trying to get back here for 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I got back home at 6:30 a.m. and had been up for 24 hours, approximately 25 hours. So this is what truckers go through. And that's why if you ever see a trucker who's a little bit, grumpy, uneasy, having a rough day, that's probably why. I try not to let it get to me too much because there's so much, especially on a day like yesterday or 2 days ago, it was 20 degrees in Maryland and sunny, not a cloud in the sky. It was beautiful. So at least there was that thing. And Bridget just joined the chat. Bridget had exactly the same thing going on her haul. She was 10 hours delayed as well. And that's why when they seem like they're in a hurry sometimes, truckers are in a hurry, that's why, because there's only a certain window they can drive, and then the government decides you can't drive anymore, and you got to pull over. So that is what it is. But let's talk about some good things. First, I think the YouTube dominance is over. I'm streaming right now, as I said before, to Rumble and Locals, as well as the audio stream. And I've noticed they've kind of reworked the whole interface for Rumble. And it is, in my opinion, it's the first variant that it's actually usable. Like the interface is searchable. The UI or UX design, as they call it, that's kind of like the layout and how the user interfaces with it and how it's laid out. It's usable. So those are some good things that are going on. Bridget says, it wasn't 10 hours, 16 hours, buddy, and I'm supposed to fly the rest of the way. Yeah, it's often, you hear the truckers will complain that often dispatchers think we have time machines. You're 10 hours away from a destination. It's like, can you be there in 2 hours? Like, no, I'm 10 hours away. Well, isn't there another highway you could take? That's so funny. And that's universal. Every trucker kind of knows that. But anyways, so the first good thing, I think the YouTube dominance is over. So I'm going to be a little less careful of what I say here. I don't really care, to be entirely honest, because I'm getting more views on Rumble at this point as opposed to YouTube. And Locals got back to me about the RMTP settings, and I think they said they're going to turn it on for me. I got to respond to them, and that will be available sometime soon. I watched a show last night, and they always make truckers the killers. Why do truckers get demonized? Because I think, in my opinion, Jesse, our media, our North American media, which is American media, are run by a bunch of entitled twink snobs who live in either LA or New York, right? Like that's what central casting is. And that's why they always demonize people in the Midwest or people in the South. Like, it's really funny. You always hear the stereotypes about people in the southern U.S., and there's always stereotypes about everybody. But my experience in southern U.S. cities is, wow, people are nice. People are so polite. People are so, thank you, sir, thank you, ma'am, like just basic courtesies. And that's not what you would get from the central casting crew that run North American media. And I think that's always the scapegoat. While the New York people and the LA people screw all of us and screw the economy and propagandize everybody. The scapegoat they use is people in the Midwest or in the South or in rural areas, rural communities in Canada and all that sort of stuff. I think that's what it is, right? But what do I know? That's just my thing. Other good things that happened this week, and there's a reason I'm telling you. I'm not trying to be self-centered. I'm just, we talk about positivity and how to build more positivity in your life. I posted this and they got back and now they've set something up. Robert Breedlove, who some of you may or may not know, he's a very, very significant name in Bitcoin. And Stephen Hicks, I managed to introduce them last week. I mentioned Stephen to Robert when I did his podcast. And they're going to be doing a podcast together. And for those of you who don't know who Stephen Hicks is, he wrote Explaining Postmodernism. He's written a number of books. His a particular subject that he loves is Nietzsche. And just an amazing... I've learned so much just producing his podcast, just listening to his stuff, reading his work. It's very focused on individualism. And quite love his stuff. He's taught me a lot, and he's become a good friend. So I managed to introduce Stephen Hicks and Breedlove, and they're going to be doing something together. And that whole thing, the cynical people use the word networking around people, and I don't know. I never really looked at it that way. I just looked at it as kind of I've introduced people many, many times throughout my life, and. Another example, two people who I've met who I've introduced, who I became good friends with. One of them very good friends with, is Gad Saad, Professor Gad Saad. I introduced him to Glenn Beck. How? Because Stephen was on Glenn Beck. I was in touch with their producers, and I sent an email to Glenn Beck's producers, and I said, hey, have you ever met this Professor Gad Saad? I'm friends with him. Here's some links and here's his stuff. And they said, no, we've never spoken to him. Could you connect us? So I did an intro and I said, Gad, here's Glenn Beck's producer. This is Gad. Please, if you could, start to talk to each other and maybe there's some good synergy. And apparently Glenn and Gad have become good friends. So why do I say that? For me, it's not about networking. It's about reciprocity. It's about doing things for other people that may better the world, which is what I'm looking at, but also maybe they'll form some friendships. And you don't do it to necessarily, you want to get something back for them. You just do it for the sake of doing it. And I've always kind of done that. And, some people really appreciate it and, will kind of always have your back. And then other people just take advantage of it. But you can't let that really bother you, right? Just kind of do what you can for the world, and hopefully it'll help make the world a better place. So, so there's some good stuff. So Stephen and Breedlove will be doing a podcast sometime over the next few months, and I may have some other announcement around Breedlove and myself in the near future. My favorite ID on YouTube is here. Hurtlock and Marazzo and Mackenzie. Tamara Leach was talking last night on Shadow Streaming and talking about BJ and Bridget. Okay, what did she say? However, she doesn't talk about Freedom Co-opt or how JCCF infiltrated the convoy. Yeah, of course she's not going to. She's facing criminal charges, right? Like these people. This is what I was trying to indicate with my testimony, and I've said on the stream here before. Anything that she or Chris Barber says, and by the way, I don't say this maliciously out of negativity. I say this out of concern. You can't trust anything they say. It's not because I dislike them. Well, maybe Barber's a little bit mouthy now. But it's not because of that. It's because I know their backs are against the wall. They've trapped themselves, and they have no exit now. So anything that comes out of their mouth is going to be scripted, and they're going to be told what to say, because they're living in fear of these criminal charges. So they're being held hostage. It's like Stockholm Syndrome. almost. I think there might be an element of Stockholm Syndrome. Yes, that's something different, but I think there might be an element of it. But the point is, whatever they say, you can't really... I wouldn't take that to the bank just because of the pressure points that they're experiencing right now. So it is what it is. Mayor Cheryl, Glenn Beck is great. That's awesome news. Yeah, I remember seeing Gadsat on Glenn Beck the first time, and I'm like, it was an early episode of his podcast. I think it was episode like 20 or 15 or something like that. And I remember seeing and saying, those are some of the things that you I don't know, some of the things that you get proud of, that like I contributed to making that happen, and it just felt really good. That's its own reward, right? And then when I find out that they form a friendship together and they go out for dinner when Gad is in Texas and stuff, it's kind of like, good. I'm glad. That's really awesome. Anyways, Bridget, she threw you under the bus, but nothing about me negative. I was shocked. Oh, she threw me under the bus? Well, what am I gonna do? You know what? I'm not gonna go down the path of negativity, and that's their cross to bear. People who do that. But and if anybody's asking if I watched it, no, I'm not gonna watch it. Don't really care. I got my own stuff to deal with. We got to figure out how we're going to deal with and fund our end of the reverse class action, since we've been abandoned, and it is what it is. Okay, so in the spirit of the holiday, this is something I thought that was interesting to talk about. Last night was the second night of Passover, so and this is not going to be a religious thing. We all love and respect each other's religions, and I don't proselytize or any of that sort of stuff, right? But this is more about people coming together in discussion and freedom and all the things that we find important. So I was invited by a good friend of mine who I've known for many, many, many years, who we reconnected a few years ago. We hadn't seen each other since high school, university, that sort of stuff. And so they invited me over for dinner, and they had a bunch of people over for dinner, family, extended family, friends of families. It wasn't big. It wasn't like Mexican big. I say that as somebody who almost married a Mexican, and their weddings, they would have 1,500 people at their weddings. So not like that. But it was, enough people. And they were... obviously anytime you do these, like all religious holidays, there's commentary and discussion on what are the values and the lessons of this holiday. And you see this is very prominent around Thanksgiving, right? And the importance of Thanksgiving to people, and how that allows them to, really tap into that emotion of gratitude. I think that's why I've discussed during Thanksgiving why that's so important and all that sort of stuff. Okay, hold on. Bridget, okay, so I'll get all the comments in a second. Let me just finish this. So at this thing yesterday, there were a couple of people who, how would you describe them? I guess you describe them as being a little bit on the leftist side of politics, if that's a fair characterization of that. I'm not sure. But hold on, let me just shut this off. I'm having some issues here. So they there was a little bit of discussion, obviously, about some of the current issues in the world. But why is the Rumble link not working again? What is with this thing? It's so frustrating. Rumble, hello, why are you not working? You should be, okay, let me try. Hold on, I'm just going to switch to studio mode and try to broadcast it and see if that fixes this. Because I can tell it's not broadcasting to all the streams as well. All right, anyways, sorry, boring for audio people. You don't care and you shouldn't care. So, all right, accessing camera. Okay, so, we start, like all families who do these, who celebrate the high holidays. It's like celebrating Thanksgiving. And there's always some reflection and conversation about history and lessons from history and all we want to learn and stuff. So there were some people who were definitely on the other end of the political spectrum. When I say the other end, people who are describing, who had a pro or positive perspective on ESG. To give you an indication that, because I mentioned ESG is communism, which basically is. I mean, that's the short version. I didn't have a lot of time to get into it. And like, no, it's not. And okay, well, now we know what we're talking about, right? And those of you who don't know, environmental, social governance, that's this nonsense that comes out of the globalist think tanks. And it's, or the other term you hear around it is stakeholder capitalism, not free market capitalism, stakeholder capitalism. Another version of interpretation of stakeholder capitalism would have been the Soviet Union. So you draw your own conclusions, right? Anyways, but the important part is the theme of Passover, and I'm going to talk more about this actually in the next ancient history Talmudic series, specifically for Christians, by the way, is what I'm trying to show the similarities that we all have. I'm going to do that maybe on Saturday this weekend. I got to see if I can get all my notes together. But the basic theme of Passover is the idea of freedom. Passover, for those of you who read the Old Testament, well, and the New Testament as well, but the book Exodus, the book Exodus was about the Exodus from Egypt, and that was those are the big lessons from this holiday. It was to acknowledge our freedom, and we just do it in a certain way. Jews always like to celebrate the suffering part, right? So we got into this conversation about freedom with these people who were pro ESG, and it's really fascinating to get into a conversation about this and slowly pivot it in over to cerveza sickness medicine. Well, I don't care anymore. Vaccines. To get into vaccine and the not even the efficacy, but the authoritarianism approach of our governments during that period, right? And so it was really interesting. We slowly would pivot over in that direction subtly. I didn't want to get into it all that much, but I eventually saw that opening to try to trigger them into cognitive dissonance, right? Because here they are, pro-ESG people, on that side of the political spectrum that I think is problematic, but in this holiday celebrating the importance of freedom and nodding their head about it. And I'm like, all right, well, do you not see the logical inconsistencies? Of course, nobody does. None of us do. Often we need to either go into deep self-reflection or we have to have somebody point it out to us. That was my job, I figured. So when everybody was nodding their heads about freedom and all that stuff, and everybody was on the same side, I then said, for example, why I was discussing why freedom is important and why we need to be able to communicate to people to always be vigilant about our freedoms and look for crouching in authoritarianism. I said, for example, the my body, my choice people treated people who were unvaccinated as second-class citizens, just as Jews were treated leading up to the Holocaust. If you've never seen somebody's face when you slip them into cognitive dissonance, it's priceless. It's really, you can see like their face reacts. First they smile, then they get angry, then they're confused, then they foil their brow, and then then they look at each other, and it was hysterical. And I just further expanded upon that, and it said, we went through this period where people were forced against their will And if not, they were essentially ostracized from society. And that's not the values of what this holiday, Passover, or the book Exodus, or the values of freedom are about. It's in contravention of it. And it was very disappointing to see so many people from our community and the Jewish organizations or whatever doubling down and supporting the very authoritarianism that they profess to teach against. Remember I said when you slip somebody into cognitive dissonance, then it was a second level. Then they're not. Now they're not happy. That's when the 7 signs of cognitive dissonance came out. There were no ad hominems, but there definitely was changing the topic. There definitely was deflection. There was definitely, so you're saying, blah, blah, blah. But it was very interesting. The conversation didn't last all that long because I didn't want to, you're there to be with family. You're there to be the equivalent of a Thanksgiving dinner. So you're not there to talk about politics. I didn't want to get too much into politics. I just wanted to gauge this philosophical insight to people who are living in the leftist echo chamber. And one thing I could tell you, they've never heard an argument from the other side. Not once. Not once have they heard any rational reasoning from somebody who is on the opposite end of the COVID years authoritarianism debate. They've never heard it. All they've heard is smears, right? But what is very interesting that I learned, I suspected and I've seen from other people, it just really confirmed it with me. Think about this idea, okay? Try to wrap your hand around this idea. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to be already. Oh, God. So wrap your head around this idea, and that is, while I was explaining to them that how we treat, well, not we, but how our society treated people who were unvaccinated was in the same direction of those people, how people, let's say in Germany in 1930s, leading up to, not during, but before, that's how they were treated as well. So they slipped into this. But what was very interesting is, did you know, and I bet nobody here knows this, or few people know, did you know that the people that were pushing the government narrative and everybody must be vaccinated or you shouldn't be allowed to participate in society and all that sort of stuff. Did you know that they see themselves as victims? Very interesting. So they, from their perspective, they're victims because of this virus, that this virus was going to kill everybody. And they are the victims because the people who are questioning the government, those people are the ones putting us all at risk. That's the narrative that they were sold. They were sold that they were victims. It's really kind of weird. And that's the problem with this doubling down on the whole, victim, the zeitgeist of victimization. That's what it leads to, right? And it was really interesting to gauge that trying to explain to them, no, what you have done, what you were doing or participating in was mass oppression and othering of a large segment of society, right? Sonia says, I can't believe masks are still in hospitals and clinics. Yeah, I was in a clinic a few weeks ago, and it's like the Twilight Zone, man. Like, it is really, I don't get it. It's just really weird. And happy Easter to you as well, Sonia, to you and your family and all your loved ones. I hope you have an amazing holiday, and I hope you're with lots of loved ones this weekend. But anyways, so the logical inconsistencies of all of this was fascinating, and communicating to people on on the opposite side of the political spectrum, explaining to them, I think what really upset them was when I explained that we're here at a Passover dinner and we're talking about the importance of freedom and fighting oppression, yet leaders in this community, not all of them obviously, but the politicized ones, they doubled down on the what's it called? They doubled down on the very sort of oppression that they fight against. They became the actual oppressor. That's how it was. It was really quite shocking to see. Somebody's saying there's no sound. Okay, let me put the condenser up. Let me check all the levels. And Tanya, tell me if you can hear sound now. I think I just fixed it. I hope. I don't know. Having problems with the hasn't been sound since you went live. Is everybody else saying this? Is nobody hearing any sound? Let me know, anybody else. Just send a little thing here. There's been nothing. Oh, here, let me try this now. Is that better? Tanya, does that work? Let me know if you can hear it. Why do they call it Passover at dinner to that I'm in and out? I'm passing over dinner. No, you know what? When I talk about it during the next ancient history, Talmudic, Mesopotamian, life lessons, I'll talk about it there. Okay, Tana, great. Thank you very much. I'm glad you told me that because I wouldn't have realized that. Yeah, I'm having an issue with the encoder. Sometimes it's, I don't know what's wrong with this. It works 95% of the time, but 5% of the time it fails, and it looked like it failed again today for whatever reason. But it is what it is. But the live stream is now in audio podcast form, Tanya. So if you listen to Spotify, and soon I will seed the RSS feeds to all the other podcast players, you'll be able to listen in audio form as well. And thank you for being here. We've just been talking about me encountering the Lefties at Passover at a Passover dinner yesterday and slipping them into cognitive dissonance by explaining that their behavior during COVID was exactly the type of behavior that we're always warning against, right? I spent so much time, all of us who've gone to Hebrew schools, little kids, you learn about oppression, the Book of Exodus, the Holocaust, all that sort of stuff. And it's just amazing that these people, one of the things I said last night that really upset them, I said, like in Germany in the 1930s, that was the government, right? For the government could do no wrong, people. Like that was the government as well. Much like blackface is the government right now, and how he treated people as second-class citizens in the exact same way in maybe, let's say, the late 20s, early 1930s in Germany. Well, early 30s. That was the same behavior, that if we kept going on this track, we might have ended up in the same spot. And it's really interesting to be in front of lefty Jews and explaining that to them and watching them slip into cognitive dissonance. It was really quite amazing. It was amazing. Yeah, I don't know why it only started 3 minutes ago. I don't know. This is on Facebook on Rumble. I've been doing this now for, let me check, on the encoder. We've been up for 33 minutes. So I'm going to have to check the software again. But I'm going to expand on this whole theme of freedom, Passover, and the similarities, all the things we have in common within Christianity and Judaism on a stream. I hope on Saturday night I'm going to try to have all my work done and all my notes ready because it's really quite fascinating, all the similarities that we have kind of in this space. They went into the BlackRock building. Yeah, you're talking about France? Oh, they went into the building in BlackRock? That must be fun. I guess they're having a fit. That's very interesting. Although their protests in France are very complex, and there's also some issues there too, but it is what it is. Aunt Beth on Local says, oh my goodness, everyone is a victim. We need heroes, strong individuals filled with courage and strength. I'm a survivor, not a victim, although technically I am. That's exactly, you know what, Beth, you read my mind. That's exactly where I'm going with this. And I tried to explain that a little bit, but again, I didn't want to get too political because, again, you're at a friend's family dinner, and even though they're all on my side or on our side politically, in terms of the government behavior and all that sort of stuff, you don't want to introduce too much friction, especially if you're trying to persuade people. A little bit of friction maybe, but you can't go too far with it. And it was very there are some positive outcomes and some positive framing around all of this. And I think one of them is, first, the importance of engaging with people on the other side. The mistake that I see a lot of people do is when they engage with people on the other side, they do what I criticized leaders of the Jewish community doing. I brought this up yesterday. I said the reason so many people get frustrated is these organizations, let's take the ADL, which I think is an extremist group and should be shut down. What do? All they do is call people names. That's it. That's their rhetoric. Give us money and we're going to call people names. Sometimes people say things and they don't understand that it may or may not be offensive. Sometimes they don't mean to be offensive. They're just stating what they know. Maybe it's incorrect. Who knows? But to respond with everything of a smear and calling people names, I mean, that's what they do to us in the political space, right? That's what everything is degenerated to. That's why, from my perspective, it's important to engage on the other side. So when you engage with people on the other side, it's really important to be able to slowly persuade them over time and not be seen in their mind as attacking them as adversarial, right? And I notice people who are really strong do that. They just kind of go in with a sledgehammer. Now, I do that sometimes too, as a strategy when it's an effective strategy, but it's not always. It usually is not. And I managed to introduce this idea of stop just calling people names. Like that doesn't make anybody more sympathetic, right? And I think that landed with a couple of people there, which was great. Perfect example. Censorship is a sure way of letting resentment build up. That's a very good way of explaining that. And I've told that to many people. That's why, I had that conversation in a podcast with Barry Weiss, which she never aired for whatever reason. It was the next day, I think Ukraine started. And we did a 2-hour-long podcast, and I explained that, part of what we were talking about, obviously Freedom Convoy, everything around Freedom Convoy, the vaccines, the mandates, all that sort of stuff. And I guess I came off as more reasonable than she realized, and which was great. And I said to her, she was, there's a little section where we talked about anti-Semitism, and I said, listen, when we have groups who play identity politics because they identify as a Jewish group, and the way they combat anti-Semitism, as they say, is to target and smear people and to platform them off of YouTube or other social media platforms. What do you think the response is going to be? All you're going to do is you're going to fuel it more. And to my surprise, she agreed with me. It was a great conversation, and unfortunately, she never aired it. But again, Ukraine was just starting, and maybe that's why. I'm not sure. So much of this, faults. Our parents' faults. Parents have let TV raise their kids. Well, it's no longer TV. Now it's an iPad. How many people have kids that that just to make them quiet, they throw an iPad in front of their face and then the kid's quiet, right? So that is part of it, I guess. Just drink a Bud Light. Sonia, you're awesome. That's hysterical. So the other, I didn't get into this too much, but a little bit, was, this is what the perpetual victimization cult will lead to. It's going to lead to people attacking and smearing each other, and because everybody sees themselves as a victim, and which is really odd because when I went to, I'm pretty secular, but I went to a Hebrew school growing up as a kid. And like I said before, you learn all these stories as a kid. You learn them both in Hebrew and in English. And you learn the story of Exodus, which is the story of Passover. And what I took away from it always was, I'm not a victim. That the important lesson of this is to always maintain your freedom and value your freedom. and why your freedom is so important. And equally, I think it was in grade 2, we started learning about the Holocaust, if I'm not mistaken. Like we would have every year, even when we were younger, we would have like memorial, but we get into learning specifically about it. And when I learned about the Holocaust, I didn't learn I was a victim. I learned that people didn't fight back enough. So I'm never going to let that happen. I'm always going to be strong, and I'm going to fight back no matter what. That's the lesson. And it's just really weird. You see all these Holocaust museums all over the world. And I think part of the issue is there seems to be this narrative about victimization. And I go into that. I don't see victimization. I see it as a warning. This is what you will never, ever allow happen to you. And that's why you need to speak up, no matter how difficult it might be, right? Which is what the Freedom Convoy became, is us speaking up. And we're not going to allow an oppressive authoritarian regime to dictate what's going to happen in every aspect of our life. That our body no longer belongs, it doesn't belong to them, it belongs to us because we're individuals, right? So those are things that I took from it. I never, and maybe it's because I'm positive and I I never see myself as a victim ever, no matter what, even with all the sickness in the past, even all the BS, the post BS of the Freedom Convoy, right? When I get a whiteboard, I'm going to map this all out. But, what we see, what's going on right now, the root to division, whatever. No, there's basically two big groups that are the Freedom Convoy. There are the freedom people and the political people. I'm not the political people. I'm the freedom people. But the corp was taken over by the political people, and the whole Freedom Convoy was subverted by this small group of political people. Okay, well, that doesn't change the fact that we all unified and came together. Like, okay, we had some political saboteurs. That's why I keep talking about it, because I want all of you to know what happened so the next time around it doesn't happen again. So you're aware of how to prevent this. Because this is not the first time this has happened, by the way. It's happened many other times, which we'll get into over the long term, right? So that's why some people say, oh, why do you keep talking about it? I mean, because people still don't understand what happened. They need to understand what happened so the next time people need to fight for their freedoms, they can look for the red flags and political operatives that are coming to subvert them. That's why I'm talking about it, right? Miss Cheryl, apparently you didn't even exist. Yeah, apparently I was in every meeting, but I also didn't exist at the same time. Like, that's so funny. And, that's how you know it's spin. And, okay, that's fine. That's the reason I don't get angry is because I know they're politicized. I know it's the political cult. That's how I would expect them to behave. Everything they've been doing since, and to me, like you saw earlier last week, Chris Barber, he tried, to undermine me numerous times and failed miserably. So they brought out some other mouthy asshole to try to do the same thing, one of these idiots who was doing it during the convoy. They're going to keep doing that because it's a cult, and I expect them to do that. I actually want them to do that. I don't understand how they're playing into my, whatever. But that's fine. That's what they're supposed to do. The subverters will always continue to subvert. And the way they're going to subvert is they're going to try to smear and defame myself, Bridget, Chris, Jason. Anybody who's speaking honestly is going to get it from them. And I hope they continue to do that. I really do. Alberto Wiggler, I love the name, can always tell when someone put the time in with their kids, makes such a huge difference in their development. Yeah, 100, agreed. And I was very lucky. Like my parents put in, despite the fact I was not the best kid, put in a lot of time with me. And some of you know I now have natural siblings biological siblings who I met later in life, that they didn't have the same privilege that I had, and their lives were a little bit more difficult as a result, but whatever. Ratson McKenzie, I laugh every time. BJ was always coherent, but others only wanted to win elections. PPC, CPC, and JCCF work together. Yes, this is true. And there were a lot of people that it was just really weird, man. Maybe in retrospect, I think I went on with maybe some naive glasses on because I trusted some people. But I was just there to end mandates and end the ArriveCan app. And some people had, it was a spectrum. The mandates bothered me, but as a techie guy, it was the ArriveCan that really set me off. That really bothered me, especially as I explained on Tucker Carlson, going up to the customs booth and them telling me, oh, they already have my information. Because I have ArriveCan, it pops up on their screen. Like, that really set me off. That really bothered me, right? But yeah, I was not there for politics. Listen, I had every opportunity in the past, believe me, with some of the kingmakers in the conservative movement, that if I kiss the right ass and say the right things, then I could have had a career in politics. I don't want a career in politics. I hate politics. It sucks. I tried it just because I thought I could make a difference. I learned how corrupt this whole process is. Well, nothing to do with it, right? But I keep getting dragged into it, and I keep, have people asking me and opinions and ideas. Like, okay, here I am. And now I'm embroiled in this legal battle, so I have no choice. Now I can't get away from it, right? I'm never running for anything, ever. Never. It's the worst. It's a career for fucking losers. It really is. You gotta understand that. But anyways, I know I shouldn't say that, but it is what it is. But the point is, so all of this is when you engage with people on, like, that experience I had last night, despite the fact that obviously there was a little bit of friction. No, there's no question. But I was in a room that it was pretty balanced. There were a few people that were on the very confused progressive cult side, but I was able to land some points and maybe broaden their perspective a little bit. And it's never one shot. It's always got to be sustained over time. So they'll probably go and dismiss it and go back to their echo chamber, whatever. But at least they've heard it, right? So when they hear it come up again on their radar in the future, they will have been at least primed for an opposing opinion from what they currently believe. Okay, so the audio podcast shuts down after an hour, so I got 2.5 minutes. I'm going to end it, but I'm going to be doing lots of streaming over the next few days, so I will definitely be doing tomorrow, maybe tomorrow night as well, if I can do this Talmudic Mesopotamian ancient history thing, which is all around the importance of freedom and the freedom movements now and how they carry forward and all that sort of stuff. So if I do, I will post a link for that. A comment that was put out to me was, this is related to what Marazzo McKenzie's point just was. I remember Chris Barber moving his truck, which I was very confused about why he would move his truck before trucks were kettled. I remember Chris moving his truck, but he put out a TikTok thanking someone for washing it for him. Oh, that's nice. More lies. He can't get his story straight. Yeah, and is it because he's cruel, or is it because he's scared? And, he cried on the stand during the POEC, so yeah, he's scared, which I just don't understand. I don't understand fear. Like, I maybe that's my problem. I don't fear anything. I just don't get that. But, okay, fine. But whatever. They can't get their stories straight. It's because they're regurgitating a story that's being told to them, and they feel as though they have no choice. And I can understand that. I did not succumb to that pressure. I told them it's going to be our way or you can go screw yourself. And so the corrupt political establishment is doing everything they can to smear and defame myself and other people. Okay, fine. But you know what? You can't run away from the truth. And more people are starting to wake up to the truth, which is good, right? And the more time goes on, the more people will understand, and then you'll all be protected for the next time this happens. Lisa says, Israel was the largest human test subject for vaccines. They have learned nothing from history. Perfect example. Was discussing exactly that with somebody the other day, and somebody who is Israeli and was quite disgusted with how Israel behaved. Notice that too, Israel was 80% vaccinated very quickly in 2021. Yeah, and I think what they're trying to do is I think they bought into this stuff. They believed it, and they were trying to do what they thought would be good on the international stage, but it blew up in their face. But what are you going to do? Hindsight's 2020, right? I believed very quickly on, like the first couple of weeks, you think, okay, this is going to be like SARS. Maybe it's going to be bad. Let's be a little bit careful. And then after the first couple of weeks, then you realize, wait, there's way too many inconsistencies here. Something's wrong. This sounds like it's politically motivated. And the ignorance of people is being exploited. That's the conclusion I came to very early on. I don't talk much about the cerveza sickness medicine, as you know, because I think time is going to teach us a lot. But my focus was just on, freedom and oppression of our civil liberties, and still waiting for all those civil liberty leaders who always crow about civil liberties to come out and talk about what happened during the COVID years. But I guess I'll be waiting a while, right? Those grifters are going to move on to something else, and that's how it's all political. It's a political tool, and it's not authentic. Cheryl, had a friend visit me in Florida last year. The airline would not release her tickets until she filled out the arrive can, so it was connected to the airlines going back to Canada. Yeah, but I think that's the government, because if the airline didn't do it, then the government would have had the right to ground the aircraft. And a very interesting background of the transportation minister at that time, Omar Al-Ghabra. I suggest everybody start digging deep into his past. It's really quite concerning. We could certainly use more Lionheart people in these times. Yeah, but you know what I think? I think you don't need a lot of those people. You just need a few key people like that just will not back down and will always engage no matter what. And that becomes, we use this term leadership, but I don't like using that because politicians bastardize that word all the time. They don't know what it means. But when you have the people who are doing their best to be the ones who don't mind carrying the torch to speak out, that gives a space for everybody else to join in and for the group to grow, right? And that's why you don't need so many people, but you need a few people that will really stand up and speak out. And somebody who's like that, for example, is Bridget. You've noticed Bridget is, I've gotten to know her very well over the last year. It's too bad we weren't connected during the convoy, because we probably would have found a lot of common ground. But it seemed to be that there was a desire to ensure that many of us didn't find common ground and talk to each other. I don't know if that's the truth. It just feels that way, right? Could be wrong, but it is what it was. Right on point. From which to galvanize. 100% agreed. Jesse, yes, Omar was banned from entering the United States due his criminal past. No, it's not due to his criminal past. It's due to his associations and statements that he had said previously. He was on a watch list in the United States. And but whatever. It's still very opaque. We don't know all the details around it, but it is what it is. Don't really care. Guy's a piece of shit. Oh, sorry, did I say that? He's just a fucking piece of garbage. Him and his boyfriend. He's got this extremist, leftist, Palestinian activist boyfriend. That's what Imam Tawhidi was talking about many years ago, that he should have concern about himself. But anyways, I don't really care. All right. Real leaders with a heart of humanity and strength will inspire others to follow, and together they can make a difference. I agree. Couldn't say it better myself. All right. On that note, Sonia, peace, love, freedom, hope, and unity to all of you. Please have an amazing weekend. If you're going to engage in these sorts of debates during Easter dinners, don't use a sledgehammer, use a scalpel. Show empathy to people on the other side who you disagree with, and lay out your points softly and then move on. Don't make your holiday weekends about politics, but discuss it on a philosophical perspective, and always be empathetic and understanding. And I think they'll feel better, you'll feel better, and you'll find a little bit of common ground. And that's what we need a lot more of in this world, is finding common ground right now. All right, I love you all, and thank you very much. I'm going to cut it here because I got to run. I got a ton of stuff to do today, but I will talk to you all soon. Lots of love for all of you.